Well, I know some people don't like you to talk about those things. I know that. Some people don't like you to mention certain things. Some people don't want you to say this. Some people don't want you to say that. Some people think if you mention some things, they might happen. Some people are really fucking stupid. Did you ever notice that? How many really stupid people you run into during the day? God damn, there's a lot of stupid bastards walking around. Carry a little pad and pencil with you. You wind up with 30 or 40 names by the end of the day. Look at it this way. Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that. And it doesn't take you very long to spot one of them, does it? Take you about 8 seconds. You'll be listening to some guy. You say, this guy is fucking stupid. Then there are some people, they're not stupid, they're full of shit. That doesn't take very long to spot either, does it? Take you about the same amount of time. You'll be listening to some guy and say, well, he's fairly intelligent. He's full of shit. Then there are some people, they're not stupid, they're not full of shit, they're fucking nuts! Dan Quayle is all three!
Hey, what's up, fellow slaves? So today we are going to be correcting our understanding of narcissism. And in order to do that, we're going to have to look at the myth of Narcissus. However, before we look at the myth of Narcissus, I want to explain where this idea came from. Believe it or not, this idea is not necessarily my own. The idea comes from a man much smarter than myself. It comes from Jose Ortega y Gasset, from his book Man and People, Chapter 6, More About Others and I. It's on page 125. This is on page 125 of the hardcover book. No gift more delighted the primitive than the gift of a looking glass, because for him it was a magical object that conjured up before his eyes the image of a man. But in that man, he did not recognize himself. The majority of those primitives had not seen themselves, and consequently did not recognize themselves. In the looking glass, they saw precisely another man. It is from here that we should have to start if we would rightly understand the myth of Narcissus, which could not originally have consisted in a boy's delighting in nothing but contemplating his own beauty mirrored in a fountain, but in the magical and sudden appearance of another man where there was only one, the I that was Narcissus. The original Narcissus did not see himself, but another, and lived with him in the magical solitude of the forest, leaning over the spring. Now let's look at the 3 definitions provided to us by Google. If you type narcissism definition into the Google search engine, you'll get these 3 definitions. Narcissism, noun, excessive interest in or admiration of oneself and one's physical appearance. We'll see if we see that in the myth of Narcissus. Next one, psychology, selfishness involving a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and a need for admiration, as characterizing a personality type. Another thing, remember, we're going to see if we actually see that in the myth of Narcissus. Psychoanalysis, self-centeredness arising from failure to distinguish the self from external objects, either in very young babies or as a feature of mental disorder. Alrighty, that one we just might see in the myth of Narcissus. Now, before I go on to the myth of Narcissus, I just want to take a look at this commenter's comment. He commented, of course, on my previous video. And it's interesting what he said because it helps understand what is wrong with our current understanding of narcissism. So this is what he says. You bring up narcissism and then attack billions of people for being too stupid to understand narcissism. I didn't attack them. I made a claim. I made an observation. But whatever, let's go with attack. The vanity of claiming you know better than billions of people and the subsequent announcement you're going to do a video to educate them about said subject is, in itself, an example of narcissism. No one can claim someone is suffering from, well, that's another thing. I mean, he's an idiot for that too, but whatever. So just that segment. So you're telling me Galileo was narcissistic? I mean, all of the great minds who had to go against the majority of the people at the time, are you saying that they were narcissistic for telling people that they were wrong and that they were right? I guess so. I guess Galileo is just a complete narcissist, right? But I digress. Let's now actually look at the myth of Narcissus. So the myth of Narcissus actually comes to us from Ovid's poem. It's Ovid's Metamorphosis, Book 3. So it comes specifically. It starts right here. After the judgment of Tiresias. So let's look at this. So it's actually about this guy Tiresias, and he makes this prophecy about Narcissus. So this loveliest of nymphs gave birth at full term to a child whom, even then, one can fall in love with, called Narcissus. Being consulted to whether the child would live a long life, to a ripe old age, the seer with prophetic vision replied, "If he does not discover himself." So that's important, right? For a long time, the augure's pronouncement appeared empty words, but in the end, it proved true. Surprise? No, it doesn't prove true. I'll explain why later on. The outcome and the cause of his death and the strangeness of his passion. One year, the son of Cephissus had reached 16 and might seem both boy and youth. That's Narcissus, the son of this guy. Maybe I'm not pronouncing Cephissus' name correctly, whatever. So many youths and many young girls desired him, but there was such intense pride in that delicate form that none of the youths or young girls affected him. Let's stop and reflect right there on the idea of pride. You know, sometimes it's good to have pride. Sometimes it's really bad to have pride. But for the most part, it's better to have pride than not to have pride. You know, a person who doesn't have any pride, they'd be more willing to do things that a person with pride wouldn't be willing to do. You know, of course, at the same time, though, maybe a person with pride might not be willing to admit something that a person without pride is willing to admit. So the thing is that there's pros and cons to having pride. It's not like, oh, you have pride and now you're a terrible person. But I digress. Let's move on, though, from there. It's just going to say something about Echo. So then there's this part about Echo, exactly how Echo was cursed with having a voice that could only echo another person's voice. It's a pretty interesting thing. So then after it explains how Echo got cursed, it then explains how Echo burned for Narcissus, how she desired him, but she couldn't do anything because her voice was only that of an echo. So then it goes on to say, by chance the boy separated from his faithful band of followers had called out, "Is anyone here?" So then basically they have this interaction where Echo throws herself on Narcissus. It freaks him out. He runs from her and running cries, "Away with these encircling hands. May I die before what's mine is yours." She answers only, "What's mine is yours." Now we have to ask ourselves, is this interaction wrong on Narcissus' part? I mean, is this such a terrible thing? You're just hunting through the woods, and then all of a sudden, this forest nymph comes out, she throws her hands around your neck, and she's longing for you. You know, I mean, is it wrong to throw her off of you and be like, hey, get the hell away from me? I mean, of course he uses these words, "Away with these encircling hands, may I die before what's mine is yours." You know, is there anything really wrong with this? I mean, maybe it's not very empathetic. Of course, I mean, we could argue that. But the dude's in the woods. It's really important to have the context of what's going on. So then after that interaction with Echo, Echo goes into a cave, and then she just dies there. She just lets herself die in the cave, and then she basically forever becomes the cave's echo or whatever. So then it goes on to this section, which is Narcissus sees himself and falls in love. He doesn't really see himself, but whatever. As Narcissus had scorned her, so he had scorned the other nymphs of the rivers and mountains. So he had scorned the companies of young men. So I'm just going to pause there. I'm just going to bring some context to this, okay? Remember, Narcissus was a fabulously lovely, beautiful man. Even when he was born as a baby, people were falling in love with him. They were throwing themselves at him. So of course, imagine if you're this beautiful person, people are constantly throwing themselves at you. I mean, eventually you're just going to scorn them. You're going to be like, yo, fuck off. Stop bothering me. Screw off. You're not going to have what I have. I just want to go do my own thing. That's all Narcissus is actually guilty of here. Then one of those who had been mocked, lifting his hands to the skies, said, "So may he himself love, and so may he fail to command what he loves." And then this one goddess, Ramnesia, who is the goddess Nemesis, heard this just request. This isn't a just request. This is actually an unjust request. You have to think critically. It's really important that when you're reading somebody's stuff, you just don't turn off your mind. No, I'll turn off my mind and just listen and believe. No, always think critically, okay? Because always think critically. Always question what you're reading. Don't just say, oh, no, he meant to write it. That's what he wrote, so you just have to accept it. No, I call bullshit. This is not a just request. Imagine if the roles were reversed. Imagine if this was a beautiful young lady, people are throwing themselves at her, basically sexually harassing her, and she's just like, telling everybody to screw off, and then some guy, some freaking incel, is all like, oh man, somebody should curse this girl and have her feel the way that I feel. Just imagine that. Okay, you imagined it? Good. So let's move on. There was an unclouded fountain with silver bright water, which neither shepherds nor goats grazing the hills nor other flocks touched, that no animal or bird disturbed, not even branches falling from a tree. Grass was round it, fed by the moisture nearby, and a grove of trees that prevented the sun from warming the place. Here, the boy, Narcissus, tired by the heat and his enthusiasm for the chase, lies down, drawn to it by its look and by the fountain. While he desires to quench his thirst, a different thirst is created. While he drinks, he is seized by the vision of his reflected form. He loves a bodiless dream. He thinks that a body that is only a shadow. He is astonished by himself and hangs there motionless, with a fixed expression, like a statue carved from Parian marble. Now, there's an issue here. There's a lot of context missing here. And there's a lot of context missing here because it goes from talking about this goddess who heard the just request to then him just randomly stumbling across this body of water and then seeing his reflected form. See, there is another telling of this story which I think is a little bit more complete. But I'm going to look at that other story of Narcissus after I analyze this. Because really we can prove our point with this, okay? Because really we can prove our point here. So it goes on to say, flat on the ground, he contemplates two stars, his eyes and his hair, fit for Bacchus, I guess that's some god, fit for Apollo, his youthful cheeks and ivory neck, the beauty of his face, the rose flush mingled in the whiteness of snow, admiring everything for which he is himself admired. Unknowingly, he desires himself, and the one who praises is himself praised, and while he courts, is courted, so that, equally, he inflames and burns. How often he gave his lips in vain to the deceptive pool. How often, trying to embrace the neck he could see, he plunged his arms into the water, but could not catch himself within them. What he has seen, he does not understand. But what he sees, he is on fire for, and the same error both seduces and deceives his eyes. Fool! Why try to catch a fleeting image in vain? What you search for is nowhere. Turning away, what you love is lost. What you perceive is the shadow of a reflected form. Nothing of you is in it. It comes and stays with you and leaves with you if you can leave. So then it goes on to Narcissus laments the pain of unrequited love. He has this whole speech to himself. He's like, I am enchanted and I see, but I cannot reach what I see and what enchants me. And then there's a little note here. So deep in error is this love. See, it's all in error. And it increases my pain the more, that no wide sea separates us, no road, no mountains, no walls with locked doors. So it's like, that's just Narcissus talking to himself. And then it goes on, he's just basically talking to himself. And here it's further confirmed that Narcissus does not know that this is his image, because over here he says, we are only kept apart by a little water. Whenever I extend my lips to the clear liquid, he tries to raise his lips to me. He desires to be held. You would think he could be touched. It is such a small thing that prevents our love. Whoever you are, come out to me. So here we have it. Narcissus did not know that that was his reflection. So this definition of narcissism that people work with, this excessive interest in or admiration of oneself and one's physical appearance, is nowhere to be found in the tale of Narcissus. He was not admiring himself. He didn't know that was himself. He believed it was another. However, the more complete story of Narcissus reveals something way more important to us, and that is, in another story of Narcissus, he is actually shot with Cupid's arrow. It's not like he saw his image and just fell in love with his image. He actually was shot by Cupid's arrow. Here is a more complete telling of that story. Here's a quick cartoon.
The echo in the mountains that you hear when you shout? Well, that is the voice of poor Echo. Narcissus was not aware that he was hurting other people. Not only Echo, but the many other fairies who were in love with him were feeling hurt. And this news went into the ears of Goddess Hera.
Did you guys catch that? Narcissus was not aware he was hurting other people.
Goddess of the Eye of Revenge, are you there?
Did you call me Goddess Hera?
Is there any way to take revenge on Narcissus, to make him pay for this suffering?
Yes, they say he will not fall in love. I shall teach Narcissus what it's like to fall desperately in love.
Good, make him suffer.
My pleasure.
Oh, it's so hot today, and I'm so thirsty. What? Hey, wait, where are you going? Hey, wait! Huh? What's this spring doing here? Ah.
Shoot the arrow.
Narcissus fell in love with his reflection in the water. This was Goddess Hera's method of revenge.
What is your name? What did you say? I can't hear you. What did you say right now? Don't stay in there. Come out and we'll hunt together. Let's run together in the forest. Why don't you come out with me? Why are you so quiet? Why don't you talk to me? No, I can't leave you here. I've never felt this way before. I won't go anywhere. I will stay here with you. I will never leave you. Never. Why do you look so sad? Please don't go. Don't leave me.
Narcissus decided not to go anywhere and wanted to stay here for always. He could not stand being parted from his beloved, even for 1 second or for 1 minute.
So the closest definition to accurately portraying the myth of Narcissus would be the third definition about the children, about the psychoanalysis of young babies whose self-centeredness derives from their inability to distinguish themselves from external objects. You see, a baby, like a pacifier, right? Here's a perfect example. So a baby who uses a pacifier too much, that they start to actually see that pacifier as part of them. And then when you take it from them, they start crying and they start screaming and they start throwing a temper tantrum and they start behaving in, I guess, what can be perceived as a rather selfish way. And it's because they see that pacifier as part of them. But I'm not really content with that definition. I think that we should have a brand new definition of narcissism that focuses on this inability to self-actualize. I feel like a narcissist is a person who's incapable of self-actualization. This line right here, what he has seen, he does not understand, but what he sees, he is on fire for. Or, actually, a really good example of a narcissist would be the people in Plato's The Cave. The people who are inside the cave. When the guy comes back and he tries to tell them that the shadows on the wall are shadows and not the real thing. And they're like, no, man, get away from me. Those are narcissists. Or the hypocritical peanut gallery that commented and downvoted on yesterday's video. It's like these people, they went over there. First at Brian's channel, Brian accused me of ad hominem attacks, and then other people accused me of ad hominem attacks. But then all they did was provide ad hominem attacks. I even explained in the video why what I was doing wasn't an ad hominem attack. But then that's all they did was provide ad hominem attacks. They acted like they didn't understand the video. That is a form of narcissism. It's like they can't see that they're doing what they're accusing me of doing. I mean, it was great. I even had some people comment. Some person commented, they called me a liberal. They said I was a progressive. Like some people in the live chat, I was like commenting on Brian's live chat last night. And like, I guess somebody checked out my channel. Maybe they didn't even check out my channel. I don't even know. I mean, they couldn't have checked out my channel because they accused me of being like a progressive or being a leftist. And I'm like, wait a second. How can you look at my channel? How can you go to my channel? The first video that you see on my homepage is an anti-federalist video. How can you go and do that and then come to the conclusion that I'm a leftist? And then the funniest thing, the most narcissistic thing of all, they accuse me of being a leftist, and then all of their tactics are leftist tactics. These ad hominem attacks, this tone policing, this, you're just mad, you're angry. It's like, I mean, none of it was addressing my points. I mean, they couldn't have behaved more like leftists, but they don't see it. It's like they're completely oblivious. They cannot see what they really are. So you see, the reason why I was calling Brian a narcissist in the previous video is because he couldn't comprehend his error. Even when I put it there, even when I put it right out there in plain black and white, very easy to comprehend, he still could not comprehend it. But let's look at something else with Brian. So yesterday, Brian actually responded to my video on Odyssey, and he revealed something about himself that I didn't know. He revealed that he is actually an anarchist. Now, anarchists, in case you guys don't know, they're probably some of the dumbest people. And that's not an ad hominem attack. That's not the premise of my argument against anarchy. It's not like my argument against anarchy is that it's stupid. I can create a perfectly reasonable argument for anarchy, but I'm not going to do that in this video because it's going to take a long time. So I'll make a whole nother video explaining why anarchy is dumb. Why the only people who believe in anarchy are the people who have very little experience with reality. I'm sorry, I digressed. The point that I wanted to make was that Brian desiring anarchy, he desires anarchy because he actually doesn't understand anarchy. But he lacks the self-understanding to admit to himself that he actually doesn't understand anarchy. You know, he's for anarchy, but he doesn't actually understand anarchy, but he isn't aware that he doesn't understand anarchy. He actually believes that he understands anarchy, just like he thinks he understands the Constitution. And that, my fellow slaves, is narcissism. Human life, by its very nature, has to be dedicated to something, an enterprise glorious or humble, a destiny illustrious or trivial. We are faced with a condition, strange but inexorable, involved in our very existence. On the one hand, to live is something which each one does of himself and for himself. On the other hand, if that life of mine, which only concerns myself, is not directed by me towards something, it will be disjointed, lacking intention and in form. In these years, we are witnessing the gigantic spectacle of innumerable human lives wandering about lost in their own labyrinths through not having anything to which to give themselves. All imperatives, all commands, are in a state of suspension. The situation might seem to be an ideal one, since every existence is left entirely free to do just as it pleases, to look after itself. The same with every nation. Europe has slackened its pressure on the world, but the result has been contrary to what might have been expected. Given over to itself, every life has been left empty, with nothing to do. And as it has to be filled with something, it invents frivolities for itself, gives itself to false occupations, which impose nothing intimate, sincere. Today it is one thing, tomorrow another, opposite the first. Life is lost at finding itself all alone. Mere egoism is a labyrinth. This is quite understandable. Really, to live is to be directed towards something, to progress towards a goal. The goal is not my motion, not my life. It is the something to which I put my life and which consequently is outside it, beyond it. If I decide to walk alone inside my own existence, egotistically, I make no progress. I arrive nowhere. I keep turning round and round in the one spot. That is the labyrinth, the road that leads nowhere, which loses itself through being a mere turning round within itself. Since the war, the European has shut himself up within himself, has been left without projects either for himself or for others. Hence we are continuing historically as we were 10 years ago. If the European grows accustomed not to rule, a generation and a half will be sufficient to bring the old continent, and the whole world along with it, into moral inertia, intellectual sterility, universal barbarism.